Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video. This video is actually going to be the first part of a small series in which I talk all about printing digital papers for your folios, mini albums or scrapbooks. And I know that a lot of you have waited for this video to be finally uploaded. But answering all your questions in just one video has led it to be 1.5 hours long, so I definitely had to decide to post in different parts. So in today's part, I want to focus on why I'm making this video and give you an overview of the following parts, and then we will talk about how to choose a printer. So just to give you a quick overview, let's go through all the different topics I want to cover in this YouTube series. And I will start by showing you what kind of albums I create and what software I use for digitally designing my albums and then printing my papers. And this might be a great option for you to use as well, even if you're not into making mini albums, but you like to craft something else with digital papers, such as scrapbooks or other crafts. I then want you to think about the prints you want to create and define all the qualities you want them to match. And then the next big topic of today's video will be how to choose a printer. So we will talk about choosing an inkjet or laser printer and other specifications you would need to keep in mind when choosing a printer for the prints you want to create. And I can already tell you that for me it has to be an inkjet printer, but the main reason for that might surprise you as much as it did surprise me. In the next part we will then talk about which papers to choose, and we will actually discuss 3 different kinds of papers, and I will show you all my test prints so that you can really decide and see for yourself which papers you like the most. I will then of course give you my recommendations for papers to use and also break down the costs per sheet if you were to use these different kind of recommendations. The next topic we definitely need to talk about in the third part of this series is print settings. And this is also very important because not only does it matter which papers and printer you use, but the correct settings can really make a big difference for your print results. And I especially didn't know that color matching can be a big issue for printing pattern papers. So we will talk a lot about colors and color matching, and I will definitely recommend you to watch this part even if you may already have a printer you like to use, because I think that it really holds some information which can lead you to get better results on your prints. And then in the final part of this series, we will talk about print costs. So I really put my printer and inks to the test so that I can tell you the price per sheet and compare it to the prices for physical paper collections. I will also give you some tips on saving inks when printing your own digital papers. And then at the end of the series, you most likely want to know if printing can be cheaper than using physical paper collections. And I'm actually pretty sure that after watching this video series, a lot of you want to start using digital paper collections and printing their own papers. Because I can definitely say for myself that I absolutely love using digital paper collections and printing my own pattern papers for making my albums. But before I get into all the different aspects of printing your digital paper collections, I just want to introduce myself and also tell you more about the context of why I'm actually making this video. So if you're new to my channel, I'm Sammy and I'm making interactive mini albums. Interactive mini albums means basically that I'm including a lot of different flaps and pockets and different closures like swing closures, magnet closures in my albums to make them interactive and a lot of fun. And for making my mini albums, I'm actually using a mix and match system. And that means that every time I'm making an album, I'm actually choosing my interactive page styles from a collection of 50 different interactive page styles. And this way I have created so many different albums for any theme or occasion. So you can find a ton of project shares on my channel. And then you can also find tutorials for all these interactive page styles on my channel, as well as for all the basics such as how to make the album cover, the hinge, and the basic pages.
And along with these tutorials, you can also get my cutting guides and templates, which makes it really easy to work with the system and make your own interactive mini albums. But for more information on how exactly this system works and also what you would need to make these albums, I will just link my information video in the top corner right now. And then, of course, you will also find the link in the description box. And as probably most of you, I also started making my mini albums by using physical paper collections. So I would just order paper pads or collection kits by all these like famous brands such as Echo Park, Carta Bella, Simple Stories, or American Crafts. And when watching other creators' YouTube videos, I noticed that some of you actually are using digital paper collections. And even though I definitely saw the potential of using a digital paper collection instead, to be honest, I couldn't be bothered with all the questions on how to do that. So, which program to use, and especially how to print your own papers.
And that was until 1.5 years ago when I started to create my digital mini album planner.
So again, for those of you who are new to my channel, let me just quickly explain to you what I created and why I love it so much and what it has to do with using digital paper collections. I basically always dreamed of having a tool for pre-planning my albums.
So at the beginning of last year, I finally started to create a tool for planning the structure of my albums.
Which is especially helpful with my collection of 50 different interactive page styles, so that when I'm making an album, I can pre-plan it by choosing the page styles I want to use and arranging them in the structure of my album. But I also always used to pre-plan my decorations a little, and the way I was doing that early on is just by making some sketches and some notes. But having a tool in which you can just digitally drag and drop your papers and decorations into your album templates is just so amazing. And I just had physical paper collections in mind when I started creating this tool. And I still absolutely love it for pre-planning my albums using a physical paper collection. But in the process of developing this digital mini album planner, which actually took me over a year to do, I noticed that there's so much more I can do with it when using digital paper collections. And when I say so much more, I actually mean that when you're working with a digital paper collection and my digital mini album planner, there are almost no limits to what you can do with your creativity.
Like you can use your pen and papers in whatever size you want them to be in.
You can actually create your own pattern papers, your own journaling cards, and yeah, just be completely creative with the collection you chose and make a beautiful mini album.
And I designed my planner to be used in Canva, which is a free designing website, and it has so many amazing tools to work with, such as adding text or editing photos, and then also a lot of different AI tools for removing the background or actually grabbing items or images from a paper so that you can then use them as a sticker. Canva also comes with its own library in which you can find a lot of different graphics to use as decorative elements in your albums or scrapbooks. But as I said, I always had at least a slight idea of what you could do when using a digital paper collection. But then I still would hesitate because of all the printing aspects. So that's the reason why, when creating this digital mini album planner, I really focused on how to make this work with printing and make printing so easy. So I basically included different size paper templates in this digital mini album planner so that you really could like just design your whole album digitally, and then you can just grab the papers and arrange them very easily on your paper template, let's say in the size A3, and then you can just print it from here. And this leaves you not only with an easy printing process, but especially with papers in exactly the sizes you would need them to be in. So you no longer have any scraps when using a digital paper collection.
But as I also have another information video on this digital mini album planner I created, in which I talk about all the different features and why I think it's such an amazing tool, I will just make sure to link that in the top right corner right now and then again in my information box. So now that you know where I'm coming from, I can start talking about all the different aspects which go into printing digital paper collections. And the main questions you probably have in mind right now are what printer and what papers to use. And as said, for that, I really did a lot of research and testing. However, I'm still no expert, so I will just share all the information I've learned to the best of my knowledge. So let's just start by thinking about what you want your prints to be like. And first off, we of course want to print pattern papers, and this is actually a very specific print, I would say. So going to a copy shop or to a printer and telling them you want to print pattern papers, they might even not really know what it is that you want, because they're used to maybe printing photos or posters, invitations, so text prints, but pattern paper is, yeah, very specific. You want a colorful, beautiful print. And then for making mini albums, you might also want to print your own photos at home. So that's the case for me. So that's what I'm putting here. But of course, you could also just print your own pattern papers and then print the photos somewhere else. And of course, when you think of what you expect of your pattern paper prints, then you probably have papers in mind which you know you like using. So for me, again, I really love working with papers by Echo Park, Simple Stories, and American Crafts. And to me, they look and feel very similar. But there might be other brands which you prefer, which maybe use a glossy finish instead of a matte finish. But these are not the papers I like using. So in this video, I, of course, will focus on these kind of papers. So let's specify the prints I want to achieve. And the first thing is the print size. And here you definitely don't have to stick to the paper sizes of the physical paper collections you like using. Even though if you're getting a digital paper collection by the same brand, such as Echo Park or Simple Stories, then you are actually getting papers in the square format, which you could print out in 12 by 12 inches, because that's what we're used to with the physical paper collections. But there's really no reason to do so, because I never have used a 12 by 12 inch paper without cutting it down. So you rather have to keep in mind what you're using your digital collection for. So if you're making mini albums, especially think of the sizes you want your mini albums to be in. So for me, I really like making mini albums in the size 8 by 8 inches. So I definitely want to be able to print 8 by 8 inch pattern papers. But then I also need all these smaller sizes, and I of course don't want to print all these papers individually, but instead I want to print them on a whole sheet of paper. So for me, the best printing size is A3 or even a little larger. And again, with my digital mini album planner, it's so easy to just use an A3 template and then have my different like pattern papers I want to use in my album be printed on these A3 papers. And then I just have to cut them down. But I want to mention here that if you're making albums in the size 8 by 8 inches or smaller, then you could even go for just an A4 printer or print size, because you would totally be fine to print an 8 by 8 inch pattern paper on here, and then you could still add smaller papers on the bottom. But for me, I really like to have not so many prints, but instead have like this larger format and then a lot of different pattern papers on here. And especially because with the A3 format, I can fit two 8 by 8 inches on one paper, and I can also fit more than just one 6 by 6 inch paper next to each other. The next aspect would be the weight of your papers, and for Echo Park, Simple Stories, and American Crafts, they use papers in the weight of something between 60 and 80 pounds, or 160 and 210 grams. And to me, any weight in this like medium weight paper range is totally fine to work with when making my mini albums. The next aspect to keep in mind is what you want your papers to feel like. And again, for the brands I like using, it has more of a rough feeling. So I don't want this very smooth feeling for my papers. And then, as said, I definitely prefer the matte finish you get with all these paper brands. Now, the next specification might be a little obvious, but I, of course, want my prints to look good. So I want good quality prints. And then last but not least, I, of course, also want beautiful colors, and I actually want the colors to be accurate, which means that they look almost like they look on my screen in the digital collection. And I can tell you that in one of the next parts, we really have to talk a lot about colors because there might be some information you're not aware of, so I definitely wasn't, and they really can make a difference for your prints. Now, having these prints we want to achieve in mind, we can focus on how to achieve these quality prints. And to get these kind of prints, it really depends on three aspects. So the first one would be which printer are you using? And then second one, of course, what papers do you use? And then the third aspect is also very important, and this is about the printing settings. So let's start with choosing a printer. And the first question you want to ask yourself is, do you want to use an inkjet printer or a laser printer? And I can tell you that for me and the prints I want to print out with this printer, I definitely have to go with an inkjet printer. And there are, of course, a lot of like advantages and disadvantages to both printing methods, but I want to focus on what really matters to me for the prints I want to have. And the first argument I found is that inkjet printers are supposed to be better for colored prints and especially for photo prints. So, as I said, I also want to print photos with my printer, so this was definitely a big reason for me. I'm not sure how much of a difference it would make using these different technologies for the pen and papers, but as I read that the colors are better with inkjet printers, I really think that it would also make a difference with the pen and papers. Another argument I found for using an inkjet printer is that it supposedly also is better for using different paper weights. But not only for different paper weights, but also for different paper types or media types. So, for example, if you want to print on a sticker paper or on a photo paper, on heavy cardstock, these are all different types, which I read is better to handle with an inkjet printer. And then the last reason is really the most important to me. And this is something you might not know because I definitely didn't know that before. But getting prints with a matte finish really can become an issue when you're using a laser printer. And to be honest, I always thought that the finish of the paper has only something to do with the paper I'm using, but it's actually the toner used in laser printers which can leave you with a shiny or glossy finish on your prints. And this is especially noticeable when printing pen and papers because for most of the pen and papers, you have the whole paper printed. So you have the whole background and then you have a lot of toner on your paper. And even though you're using maybe a very like rough recycling paper, you will still get this glossy finish. And that's definitely something I didn't know. And let me just tell you very quickly why this is also the reason I'm no longer printing at a copy shop. So, yeah, at first I thought that to get these high quality pen and paper prints, the best option for me would be to go to a copy shop or to a printer. And I actually have a printer right next door. So it was super convenient, and that's where I started to print my pen and papers for my albums. And I actually immediately noticed that I'm not super happy with the results because of the shiny finish. And that's when I actually asked him for using another paper because I thought that's the issue. So we were looking for other papers. He showed me a book with different paper types, and then I actually chose a recycling paper, which is a very like rough paper, and it felt like crafting paper. It felt like EcoPark paper to me, and I thought, okay, with this paper we will get the matte finish I want. And I actually ordered this paper for, yeah, quite a lot of money, but then I still had like this glossy finish and I was so confused. And yeah, that's when I noticed that it's actually the toner itself which has this shiny glaze to it.
And I still have some of the prints from this printing company, so let me just show you what it looks like. So as you can see here on the back side, it is a very matte paper. It is a recycling paper with a lot of structure. It feels very rough, as I said, but then when you look at it at the print from the front, then it is definitely a glossy finish, and that's because of the glossy toner.
And then I also looked up some other printing companies, and I noticed that actually most of these printing companies would use laser printers because I think first off they are much faster than inkjet printers, and then also when printing a lot they might be a little cheaper because the toner is cheaper than inks for the inkjet printers. Another method of printing at printing companies would be to go with offset printing. And offset printing, as far as I understood, is a printing technology which is really great and it gives you high quality prints. And I think that's also most likely what the brands like EcoPark and American Crafts and so on are using, but you can only use it if you want to print a large quantity of prints. And not only that, but you also have to order a large quantity of the same prints. So it totally makes sense for a brand to use this printing technology because they would have like the same pen and paper printed, I don't know, 1,000 times. But for me to print just for my own albums, this is not an option. Now, this is what really got me looking into buying my own printer and printing at home so that I can use an inkjet printer and get these matte finishes I want.
And I'm actually really happy that it had me looking into getting my own printer because now I know that printing at home is much more convenient and also much cheaper than printing at a copy shop. And surprisingly to me, I can get at least the same quality or even better qualities with my prints.
Now that I know that I definitely want an inkjet printer, I was looking at other aspects to find the perfect printer for myself. And these are the aspects I already mentioned. So, of course, I need a printer which can print up to A3 or even A3 plus size. I then want my printer to be able to print up to 80 pounds or even more. For the good quality of my prints, I also made sure that my printer can print in high resolution. And then, of course, I was also looking for my printer to be very affordable. And to be honest, before getting into all this research, I really thought that this would be something which is not really compatible with what I want for my prints. So I really thought that I would have to get a very expensive printer to print at home. And of course, there are a lot of different printers and printer brands out there. So I had to start by actually looking for printers other creators would use for printing their scrapbooking or pen and papers. But it wasn't so easy to find a lot of information on what everyone is using for printing digital paper collections because I think it's just not something a lot of crafters do. And then also, there were just not a lot of YouTube videos or blog posts about that. But the printers I found mentioned the most are printers by Canon. And after looking up all the specifics and comparing them, I was really left with two printers I thought would be great to get. And the first one is the Canon Pixma IX 6850.
And as you can see here, I also wrote down IX 6820 and 6860. And that's because when I did my research and checked for the availability in other countries, I noticed that depending on the area you live in, it might be a different name, but the printer features are exactly the same. So I assume it's the same printer. It is just like a different number according to if you're getting it in Europe, in the US or Canada, or in Australia. And the second one is the Canon PIXMA Pro 200 or 200S. Now, according to Canon, the Canon PIXMA IX is a multi-purpose printer, and then the Canon PIXMA Pro is a professional photo printing. And then just to mention some other differences, the Canon PIXMA Pro comes with 8 different inks, and then the Canon PIXMA IX just has 5 different inks. And having 5 separate ink tanks means that you don't have to change the whole ink set if one of the inks is running low, so you can just change the color which needs to be changed. I also want to mention here that those inks for the Canon PIXMA IX are also available in extra large size, which is of course cheaper than buying the regular sized inks. But as said, I will actually talk about the costs of inks and the cost for printing per sheet at the end of this series, so in the last part. And even though for the print resolution you get higher DPI with the IX, I read that because of the different ink system used in the PIXMA Pro, you really get high quality photos and high quality prints. So they might be a little better because you have more colors to work with, and also the printing system. But overall, what I got from the comparison is that with the Canon PIXMA Pro, I would just get higher quality photos. But that doesn't mean that you cannot print nice photos with the Canon PIXMA IX, and because it's not my focus and I don't need my photos to be in a very high quality, I actually went with the Canon PIXMA IX 6850, especially because of the price difference. And the price I paid is 200 euros, which in my opinion is really very affordable. I'm not sure if that's a good price, but at least for me, before I thought that I would have to pay much more to get a good quality printer. And as I've used it for quite some time now, I can really tell you that I'm super happy with this printer. And as you can see, it has everything I wanted my printer to have, and then it can even print on heavier cardstock. So it says that it can print up onto 300-gram cardstock as well, which I think is very handy, especially if I, for example, want to print some embellishments, which I need to be a little thicker. So I can definitely recommend you to get this printer, especially if you're also looking for an A3 or A3 Plus printer and all the other criteria I was looking to get. However, as said, if you, for example, are totally fine with only getting an A4 printer, then I would definitely recommend you to do your own research and have another look at the other Canon printers. And just to give you a tip for your research, I actually found that there are some ink plans you can get with the Canon printers, and these ink plans actually mean that you would be able to subscribe to this plan for a year, I think, and then depending on how many sheets you print per month, you're getting the ink delivered to yourself, and it can be much cheaper than buying the inks separately. Unfortunately, this service is not offered for the A3 printers, so this is not an option for me, but it might be an option for you, so definitely keep that in mind if you're looking for an A4 printer. And now that you get to see this printer in action, I really can't wait to show you a close-up of the print results and talk about the papers you can use along with this printer to get really amazing results for your pattern papers and photos. And as said, this will be the focus in the next part of the series. So I really hope that you enjoyed watching today's video, and as always, if you did, I would love to get your feedback in the comments down below, and then also make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so that you don't miss any future videos. Now I hope you're having a great day, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye!